Hello everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and today we're going to be rolling on Kickstarter for June 2018. That's right. So we've got a bunch of projects here that have actually, and this is kind of horrible on my part, so I do want to apologize first off for not getting this episode or edition of Rolling on Kickstarter out earlier in the month, because if I had have done that, you would have been a little bit more informed about some of the things that happened in June. There was a bunch of projects that have already actually just literally closed, although a couple of them I actually focused on the channel, games that I really liked even through the first Kickstarter, and that most recent one that has just closed was Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea. So I do have an ongoing playthrough of that on the channel, so you can check that out if you are interested in it. I believe during the Kickstarter that if you pledged at the $1 level or above, then you'll have access to the pledge manager, and at that point you can add more in if you want to actually jump into the game. I think that was one where $1 would get you entry into the pledge manager, and that's always a nice ability in a project on Kickstarter to give you that option. I've always liked that, even from a personal standpoint, because sometimes I'm just not sure if it's going to work money-wise in terms of backing different projects. So sometimes it's nice to just back $1 and then later on, you know, have the money available to do so. Or to up that pledge. So what we're going to do here in this series, which is what we've been doing for the past few months, is essentially I'm going to be going through everything that is, and I'm not going to say everything because that'd be a bad way to start it up, but I'm going to basically go through the majority of the popular solo games currently on Kickstarter, but also with an eye open for stuff that is not as popular, things that are maybe brand new to Kickstarter that a lot of people wouldn't even have known about. So some of these projects I'm aware of already, and then some of them I'm going to discover as I go through, because Kickstarter is an ever-evolving or revolving door, maybe is a better way to say it, of projects, and really trying to stay on top of it could almost be a full-time job in itself. So I don't know absolutely everything, but I'll do my best here to go through the projects I think are the coolest that stick out to me. Again, this is just my opinion, so for those of you that are that if I happen to jump past your project or I miss it and it's solo playable, please let me know in the comments below, because that'll let my community know more about that particular game, because I'm not going to be able to I may miss it. There's just a lot here. So first off, we've got a bunch of things off the top here. So this is just going to show you the tabletop games that are the most popular on Earth. So Critical Roles here. This one's role-playing, so I'll leave that one alone for now because we don't really focus on role-playing on the channel as of yet. This one right here is actually in its last 48 hours. So as of this video being published, there may be even less, likely 9 hours, 7 hours. There's probably not that much time left. So this one's actually really interesting. And this is actually created by the individuals who made a game that I really, really liked called Outlive. And you can see it right here. So they made this like post-apocalyptic world, but it's worker displacement is what they called it, and survival. And it was really cool, and they did a really good job on it, and it did have quite a bit of support, and it looks like they're doing quite well with this one so far too. Again, you guys, for those of you that are in the States or in the UK, all the currency you're going to see here on all of these games will be Canadian, so I do apologize for that, because you're going to have to make that adjustment in your mind as to how much money this project's actually making, because well, 500,000. This is basically making almost $500,000 Canadian, but there you go. So you can convert it as 287,000 pounds. So last 40 hours to go with this one. This is one I've been looking at for the entire campaign it's been on. This one I haven't played yet. So like, this is brand new. I didn't get a prototype for this one. I don't know how well it plays solo. It does play solo. And I think, if I'm not mistaken on this one, I think solo was in from the get-go, and that's another thing that I really... So what I normally do is I'll do a quick search to see. So solo is not even mentioned on the main page in any actual writing, but you can see right here, mini cards for solo. So it looks like they unlock solo as part of the stretch goals. So, oh, there it is right there. So 40,000 pounds solo mode was unlocked for one player. So that's really cool. This is, again, I knew this because I've been looking at this one for a while. This is not exactly the best way that I've always found it to work. I typically like it when the solo mode is built into the core of the system of the entire game, the mechanisms from the get-go, because it just means it just has a better chance of having long-term appeal after the game actually hits shelves or hits doorsteps. If it's a stretch goal, I find that it can be 50-50. It's literally flipping a coin as to whether or not the solo mode ends up having legs and or even being supported enough to even call it a solo mode and not just a tacked on extra thing. So I don't want to, I'm not bashing this particular project at all, but whenever I see it as a stretch goal, it's something that's kind of like they'll do it if they have time type thing. It's part of their stretch goals for this project. So, you know, again, for those of you who've been following this project religiously to the point of checking every update and every comment, it looks like this was actually unlocked very early in the project, so this was obviously something they were looking into beforehand. And it is a worker placement game, so it would be interesting. This is one that I would be interested in checking out, and because it's a game from a publisher and designer, I should say, that I'm familiar with, then it makes me even more interested in it. So this is definitely one that I would keep an eye out for and take a look into if you're looking for something that's like in the worker displacement kind of situation. So the next one, which is really cool, this one's called Tricarion, and this thing's been out for quite some time. This is a really interesting premise for a game, and does actually have a solo mode inside of this one. So I'll just see if I can actually find, there we go. So it has a solo mode. It's going to include a dedicated solo mode with an elaborate backstory. So this is going to be one of those things where, again, it's not going to be tacked on. This one's actually straight away going to be part of the situation. So that's really cool to see. It was not a stretch goal. It was built in. You can see it's 1 to 4 players. So this one's really interesting from the standpoint of heaviness. Tricarion is not a light game. It's well, they're labeling it right here as a medium-heavy Euro-style game. So for those of you that don't typically like Euros or don't like heavy games, this is going to maybe make you want to run away. But if you like the theme, which in my opinion, this is extremely cool theme. It's not overdone at all, really, in the board game world yet. But the idea is that you're becoming a legendary illusionist, and there's also this expansion that adds to this of the content. There's a collector's edition involved here, so they're really ramping up where they went with the first Kickstarter the first time through. You can see right here the dedicated solo mode's right part of the actual pledge itself, and I believe it comes as part of the expansion, if I'm not mistaken. So that's just really, really cool. This is something I'm going to be jumping in on because I really like games that are thinky. Thinky is not really a thing, but I sometimes say that. You know, it's just one of those types of games that basically has a lot going on, lots to keep track of. And I like games like that with lots of strategy. I like Euro games. Primarily right now, I think I'm more of an Ameritrash gamer, but Euros, I really do like quite a few Euros as well, surprisingly. So I'm saying I'm starting to, my needle used to be 75% Ameritrash, 25% Euro. I'm thinking now it's more 50-50. And I don't think it's ever going to really change from that because I love so much of either side that I don't know which way to sway, but that's kind of besides the point. This is definitely one worth looking into. So if you haven't already heard of it, and I'm sure you have because it's in the popular list, it has some time to go still. Not much though, 41 hours, my mistake. I thought there was actually more time than that. But as of this release of this video, there will be some time for you to look into it, see if it's something you want. This game does exist already, the Tricarion base game is already out there because there was a Kickstarter prior, so you can go to the creative button here. You can find their original Tricarion here where they first released it, and check out some of the gameplay. There's obviously gameplay videos on this as well, so I would definitely tell you to do that because these two are ones you should be looking into. The next one here, this is a role-playing based game, so I'm gonna skip past that. Farlight Mission Critical, I've never heard of this. However, I've heard of Game Salute. So I'm just going to click on this really quick because I'm not sure. Let me just see here really quick. See, does this one I don't know much about, but I don't know. It does not have a solo mode. Or at least it doesn't have a solo mode listed in any of the description within the entire page. But whenever I do those quick finds looking for solo, I do that a lot. But also you have to be aware that sometimes individuals will create their graphics and they'll put solo inside the graphic. And then, of course, obviously your find is not going to find it. So it could be in here and I could miss it. So if somebody knows more about this project and wants to shed some light on that, please do. That would be awesome. We got Wreck Raiders, another one that I'm really not sure of. This again might have been one that this one launched maybe more recently. Not too sure. It doesn't play solo, so there we go. So that one's That one's out of the question for us on this channel anyway. Tangarden, this one is soloable and is actually doing really well. 13 days left to go. This one I will admittedly have not taken as much of a look into because I don't know if the theme for me is enough for me to want to jump in on it. But for some people, and if you're interested in this theme, you are going to jump on this like crazy. It is a Euro game. It does play solo, but it has beautiful artwork, beautiful components. It's a really pretty looking game. It almost kind of has, I look at the coins and stuff, it kind of almost has a Rising Sun vibe, just in the coins there, nothing else. But I like their use of 3D terrain and stuff like that, so I found that kind of cool. But again, I haven't really researched into this one enough. But this one does play solo. So, and this is right out of the box core experience solo, not a tacked on solo mode. So, doing very well. Still 13 days left. This is one that's worth checking out. Previous Kickstarter creations from this individual include Spirits of the Forest, which I'm actually familiar with. Dead Man's Doubloons, I'm not, and these other ones I'm not. So actually, this is the only one that I recently saw come through. What was that, like 3-4 months ago? I think they did this one. So this one is interesting, and check it out. See if you think it might be something you are interested in. Moving on here, we got Gravity Warfare, so gaming on a whole new level. This one, let's see, 2 to 6, so that's out for now. So this is the other thing, guys, if you're ever familiar with a project where I just look and I see 2 to 6 and I jump past, if there's a stretch goal that unlocks solo and I missed it, let me know in the comments, because sometimes that happens. Sometimes these designers will come out with a game, they don't make solo, and they tack it on later, and sometimes, in rare cases, some of those tacked on solo situations actually turn out to be really good. That's the fun part, is trying to figure out when they're good and when they're like a last second thought. And it's a very, very tough thing to know. And it's very, very tough. And it's even harder to recommend projects here. And that's essentially what I'm doing with this Rolling on Kickstarter series here, is really just showing you the games that are solo, talking a little bit about them if I played them or if I've experienced with them, or if I really think you should jump in on it, and things like that. But and then some of the games I'm not going to know anything about, because we all can't know every game. This one I've heard lots about. I didn't get a chance to check this out in prototype form. I've seen tons of posts on this in social media, people playing this one, enjoying it. It's doing really, really well. I know this one plays solo. If I'm not mistaken, I think this one might be solo only. I think this only does play one player, if I'm not. I think it does. Sorry, just gotta double check here. Yeah, so there's solo. I might have missed the, where is it here? I must be blind. Well, regardless, I know it plays solo, so that's how I'll say that. I don't know anything about this one. This is one I'll likely be looking at more so after the Kickstarter delivers than during the Kickstarter. I wasn't initially drawn in enough to want to jump in on this one, but I am my interest has peaked since the Kickstarter has hit, and we'll see where this one goes, because it's doing really, really well, and that's awesome. I'm really glad for that, because it's nice to see solo games kind of churning along at a good pace. This one's interesting. Overturn Rising Sands. This came out of nowhere. I didn't know anything about this thing, and this honestly, from the surface level, looks like any other game in terms of a semi-co-op turn-based tabletop game, like you can see there in the title. It's got rich story, unique magical world, looks like a typical fantasy romp, and you're kind of going, we've seen 1,000 of these, why is this one special? I don't know what to say with this one, but when I looked at this picture of this game board and I looked at the miniatures and stuff, I went like, this looks really cool. Like it almost looks like a mix of what's going on with Mythic Battles Pantheon in terms of and I'll show you what I mean by that, not necessarily the miniatures and stuff, but more so the board and the movement. I don't know if you guys can see the grids there. That makes it worse. I thought I could zoom in on that picture, but that was a bad idea. Let's see here. Let's see if I can find a picture here. Lots of really, really cool miniatures, tons of add-ons. Like, it looks like they've gone to really, really good. They put a lot of effort into this Kickstarter page, for sure. Like, I went through this. I actually watched the videos. I watched a large majority of these cinematic scenes, and there you go. That's actually a really good example right there. You can kind of see it. The grid patterns, how they've broken up the map, reminds me of kind of how Conan works and that kind of thing. But then you're also noticing like they're really trying to emphasize story with this and not just have a super heavy miniatures game, which I guess obviously there's tons of miniatures in this one as well, like most others, but the story is supposed to be the driving factor here, to the point where you're interacting with NPCs. It's also just the theme of it and where it's located. I don't know, where is this one actually located again? I can't remember what they called it. Yeah, Middle Eastern folklore. So it's just such a cool area for them to try to explore, because this is not an overdone theme at all. This, I mean, if you were to paint this with a typical fantasy brush, then you'd say this could be like many other games that are out there, minus all the really cool 3D terrain. It would look like most other miniature games, but this has something drawing me into it, and I would highly recommend you guys to at least go through the Kickstarter page, watch some videos, and see whether it's for you, because I do think there's something special about this one, and I think it's flying under the radar a bit more than it should be. This is actually this creator's or studio's first project on Kickstarter. I don't know what their past was, so that always has to be taken with a grain of salt as well on a first project. But at the same time, very active in the comments section. You can see here they've got like 3,000 plus comments. The designers are speaking with people ongoing. There's a good FAQ, decent amount of updates are coming through, stuff like that. But anyway, without going on too much longer, it looks interesting. And also, this is actually in Canada, surprisingly. I noticed this the other day too. I was in Mississauga, Canada. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. So anyway, enough about that one, but this is one that came in left field for me. I found this one, I think it was like 2 days ago, I want to say, maybe 3. I can't remember when it launched exactly, but a couple days after it launched or a day after it launched, I saw it and I was like, what is that? Kind of looks like everything I've already seen before. And then I opened it up and looked more and I was like, this looks really cool. So anyway, that's one that I recommend checking out. Solomon Kane, this one, absolutely recommend checking this one out. This one might be the highest one on the list for solo play right now, coming from Mythic Games on Kickstarter. I think this might be my #1 projected, or not projected, but #1 pick as it for June anyway, if you're looking to pick something up as a solo player. Again, it still depends on whether or not the theme, the presentation, the artwork, the style, the gameplay fits what you're looking for. So at the end of the day, you got to do your research. You got to make sure those things fit. But I think for what I've been seeing anyway, this is a very, very interesting game. It's going to take place on a much more compact battlefield, and they're I forget if I'm remembering correctly. I think there's chapters. I think there's acts, and then there's scenarios within them. I think is how they break it down. There's they say that a typical act, I think they said, takes about 3 to 4 hours. There's actually a really good video that details that much better than I can do, which is actually part of their updates here. You can go find it. There's one that details the solo mode a little bit better and helps you understand what exactly is involved with that. The fact that solo mode is actually being built into the core game experience is awesome. So this is not being tacked on last second. It came into Kickstarter with a 1 to 4 player co-op. So this is totally doable as a solo playable game, and I think that's why it's doing so well. The theme, there's actually, I believe, a movie for Solomon Kane out there as well, and I think it's one of those like, kind of has like a little bit of a cult following behind it. It did okay, I think, when it hit in theaters and things like that, in the spots that it did hit theaters. But I think it has more of a cult following, and I think it's more of an underrated movie than most people give it credit for. And it's an interesting theme. It's an interesting premise, and I don't know. It's worth looking into. So that's definitely one I would check out. Moving along, loading a little bit more, we've got some dice. So dice are always cool. They have nothing to do with playing solo though, but dice are cool, so you can check that out. There's an ultimate board game backpack. This, to me, I've always thought these would be cool. I'm just going to talk about this for a second, even though it has nothing to do with solo gaming, but a backpack. A backpack is cool. You carry a bunch of games with it. Obviously, if you're heading to a convention, Probably wouldn't recommend carrying this on your back. You're probably going to want to cry after a while. You wouldn't want to buy games and be sticking them in here. It wouldn't be fun. But if you're talking about moving games from your house to your friend's house or your house to your local game store, this could be the ticket, because it is a lot safer than throwing it in the back of your car or your trunk and then getting there and realizing that it's a disaster. Actually, you know what this really reminds me of is a really, really horrible story. I saw somebody on one of the social networks that I'm in. I don't know if it was Twitter or Facebook, but somebody showed me a picture of Gloomhaven in a trunk after a car accident, and it was everyone was fine in this car accident, but the trunk, the back of the car got hit so bad, and Gloomhaven was in the trunk that it literally just exploded inside the trunk. And I think it was like the day after the person got it or something. And it was just a massacre of board game, cardboard, and everything all over the place. So people were just kind of crying all over social media about it, because as long they knew the people that were in the accident were safe. So then the focus became, oh my goodness, what happened to this game? So yeah, again, I guess the backpack, it might help your game in that situation, but accidents happen in all walks of life at all times randomly. Moving on, what do we got here? Did I just skip a whole bunch of stuff? Oh yeah, here we go. Okay, so Combo Fighter. Don't know anything about it. I'm going to skip past this one. The City of Brass. City of Brass. Frog God Games. That sounds kind of... Oh, no. Sorry, this is a... yeah, this is a role-playing game, if I'm not mistaken. What is happening here? Yeah, I have to go back down here. Sorry, guys. I just got to get my page back. Getaway Driver. Interesting. Let's open this up in another link. Two-player game. Okay, so we can't do that one. Raccoon Tycoon. Interesting. Okay. I don't think that's... If I remember correctly, I think that one is a... Yep, 2 to 5. So that's not going to work. Edible Games Cookbook. Black Sonata, this is one. Okay, so this is a weird one. And I say weird not as in like it's a bad thing. I say weird as in I saw so many videos for this thing come out before this one actually hit that I literally thought that this was going to just soar. It's doing well because I think the price point on it is quite low. So the fact that it only costs $24 to get in, and if you want to kind of go all in, I guess, with this one, which is maybe the extra stuff, you get some Nail-Your boxes, 40, but they're gone now. But you can see there's a lot of people that looked into this one quite a bit, and there was a lot of chatter that it was a really, really good game. It did do well, or it seems to be doing well. It's kind of underperforming a bit more so than I thought it would. But at the same time, based on its price point, maybe it's not. It's kind of hard to gauge because 2,300 backers is not tons, but the 85,000 is really good for a $24 game. So either individuals are buying multiple copies, but either way, it's doing well. I don't know much about this one. I did see that this one was it's just solo only. So it's one of those ones that that I should probably look into, but I saw this prior to it hitting Kickstarter. I didn't have the time to take to actually dive into it and look into it to see if it was something I liked, and I had to make some tough decisions, and this was one of the ones that kind of slipped through the cracks for me, and I decided not to showcase this one, and that was mainly just because of the amount of other games that were going on at the same time. I couldn't fit it in. However, it is a solo game, and so likely when it does actually produce, I will probably try to get my hands on it to give it a shot, because any solo game that has a good following of individuals behind it in terms of backers, then there's got to be something about it that's interesting, and I'm totally all about checking out stuff like that. So that was just one that just originally off the cuff didn't entice me enough, I guess is the best way to say it. But now as people are starting to back it a little bit, I'm like, it could have something special there. The Hunter's AD 2114. This is one that I think people are starting to find a little bit more about. They're also, I don't think a lot of people know about this one. The individual that made this one has made a couple other games before this has actually even tried to release the Hunters originally back here in 2015 and has come back revamped with what I think looks to be a better game. So this is a really interesting one because it's a cooperative board game for 1 to 4 players. So solo is part of the base box. That's good. You're a hunter and you face enemies in a post-apocalyptic world. So you got the really cool thing about this one is the story that's supposed to be a very big focal point of this particular game. You got core box miniatures, things like that. You've got your base board. You got what looks to be building out a base, kind of almost like this War of Mine kind of style. You've got these little you've got these tiles here that I'm not too familiar with, but then you've got these actual areas. 13 double-sided scenario tiles, kind of like you see in most games that involve miniatures and things like that. But what I'm getting from this, the more I've looked into it, is it really does feel like this War of Mine mixed with kind of tough to put my finger on exactly. Sign Tempora, I guess, would be a good or Sign Tempora, if I'm saying that correctly, which is another game that came on Kickstarter a long time ago, which is a sci-fi miniature game. It kind of looks like a mix of those two games together. So it's got the story, but then it's also got like this War of Mine vibe to it. So I think that's kind of what they're going for with this. It looks interesting. My interest has been piqued just based on the gameplay elements and the story elements and what I'm seeing through all the content here, because I really think this War of Mine is an awesome game. And so I'm thinking that this one could be something special, and it could also be something that's kind of like a diamond in the rough. Like, not a lot of people know about it, but it's going to maybe surprise people. So anyway, this one is doing quite well. It just recently came out, I think, maybe within the last week or so. So it's got a lot of time left, and it's doing all right. So it's off to the races, and that's something you could potentially check out. Just 1 second here while I get back to where I was. This thing seems to reset every single time I change things. All right, so Vigilante City. Role-playing. The Angry GM. Okay, we'll skip past that one. Folded Space, skip past that. These are more books. Goblivion. We actually talked about this one in the last episode. That would have been in May. So it's actually down to 13 hours by the time this video comes out. It probably won't even actually be on Kickstarter anymore, so I do apologize about that. This one did have solo as part of it, so I mentioned it and talked about it a little bit at that point. So if you want to see more about it, you can look back at the prior episode. These ones here look like light card games, trick-taking card games or games, and then role-playing games. So we're going to continue on through. I think at this point we're getting kind of out of... into the randomness area, into the area of the unknown. This is kind of where you get into... This is what I like to call, when you get to like about... let me see here. And again, I've got this filtered by popularity, so keep that in mind. Probably when you hit about here. Once you hit the Christmas Lights card game and below, you start rolling dice. And when I say rolling dice, what I mean is rolling dice on whether or not your project is going to, well, they're going to fund, but whether or not they're going to be what you hope they're going to be. In other words, it's more of a gamble. Not that the ones that are more popular are more likely to succeed, but in most cases, that kind of is the premise. Like, the more people that are backing and behind a game, obviously are funding it at a higher rate, has a better chance of succeeding, or a better chance to handle any horrible or potentially crushing kind of situations in the Kickstarter production process. So anyway, we did all the popularity list that I want to cover in this episode for June. So let's just do a quick check on newest, because in the last video for May, people said that the popular list is honestly the one that most people want to see first or see me talk about first, but then they also wanted me to check out the newest list to see if anything popped up there that might be a surprise. So just so that you guys know, I have not looked through the newest list, so this I'm going into cold, and I may not even know anything about some of these games. Now, some of these we've seen already. This one was actually there. The Grid, this one was definitely in the bottom of the popular list. This one here, so 2 to 4 players for that one. Let's see here. What do we got? So we're going to have to load a little bit more. I might have to start using a new window to avoid having to reset this every time. Oh my goodness, the Inequalityopoly. Yep, I think we've, like, here's the funny thing about this. Sometimes you get to these patches in Kickstarter where You wonder where all the, like, I know for a fact, first off, before I say what I'm going to say, you know, there's a ton of really good games coming out in July. I'll just say that right now. There's a whole bunch of Kickstarters coming out in July. The Simon's got one releasing. There's Thunderstone Quest is coming back. There's, I think, a zombie game from Victory Point Games, I think, or somebody along those lines coming back. There's a bunch. There's a whole bunch coming out in July, but it's really funny because right now, literally right now, I think this window between like June 1st and June 26th is the window, or was the best window, for any type of individual who's looking to get primetime real estate on Kickstarter with a new idea. So far this year, because this has probably been in my opinion, one of the slowest months on Kickstarter, and most people are probably clapping their hands and they're taking their wallet and they're loving it, because when there's not that many things on Kickstarter that are really grabbing your attention, that means everyone gets to save some money, because you're not being tempted by all the wonderful creations that people are putting out. But I can tell you that if sometimes it's really funny because just the way projects line up. When July hits, I think there's going to be at least 3, 4, 5, 6 major projects landing all in the same week to 2 weeks. And I always find that interesting because you have the same core group of kind of hardcore gamers, or even just new gamers to the hobby, that are kind of looking at Kickstarter and they're going like, oh man, there's 6 Kickstarters here. I can only afford one. And I'm talking about myself included. Like I can't always just get all 6 Kickstarters that come out. I have to make decisions on which ones I'm not going to get, and or vice versa. But where I'm going with that, which I'm like derailing in my mind right now, but basically it's always interesting, and seems to always happen that way on Kickstarter, that like all the greatest projects that everyone's hyped up about all seem to jam up in the same week or two. And then everyone's just kind of like scrapping pennies to make it work across multiple projects. Where, to be totally honest, and I don't think there's any reason to go any further. The reason I'm going to diverge off my little train of thought here is because I'm not seeing anything in this newest list that's even remotely interesting me. So normally, in the prior months of doing this rolling on Kickstarter, I definitely have seen some stuff pop up that have been really cool that I want to talk about, but there's literally nothing here. And when I say nothing, I'm not trying to say that these projects are no good. I just mean in terms of solo play, there's some here that are solo, but they're just not what I'm looking for, and they're not the style of game that I'm looking for. So I can almost see the box cover, I can see what they're called, what the theme looks like, and I'm like, nah. So there's not much there, but you can see just by popularity alone here, the best stuff to focus on as a solo gamer right now, if you're wondering which ones I would tell you to take a look at or do your research on the heaviest, would be this one for sure, which I'm not going to try to say because I'll probably butcher the name. Tricarion for sure. So these two. The next one I would say would be, so let me say this differently. The ones that you definitely should research and look into to see whether you're interested are this one, and Solomon Kane. The ones that you should do a little, depending on if you're interested in the theme, or if you've already backed some of the major ones I just pointed out, which most people probably have, then the ones on the side that I would recommend would be Overturn, Escape the Dark Castle, Tang Garden, and probably the other one we mentioned earlier, Black Sonata. And the Hunters as well. So that would be kind of like those would be the side ones, the ones to just check into if you're really trying to find something. If you're that desperate to find something on Kickstarter, then go down to that level. But I think the hottest ones right now are definitely this one here, which is going to disappear soon. Tricarion's, actually all these are going to disappear very soon. So this one, and Solomon Kane. Once these 3 are off Kickstarter, it's going to be open season for the next big project that comes in. Really, the rest of them, there are some big ones. I mean, technically, I shouldn't really be saying that Overturn's not that big. It really is, and same with the Castle one as well. It's just I don't think they're on the same level of popularity. But you know what? Lots of time to. I mean, this Overturn's got 22 days left, and they've already made a bunch. Whereas Castle his days are coming down. So Anyway, there's so much here to break down, so much to talk about. I don't want to go on too long, so this I think is perfect. I think we've kind of covered everything. The other filter that's always interesting is the magic filter, which basically just has Kickstarter filtering their top picks of projects that Kickstarter loves. So they love, you know, they actually do like Trickerion, Dark Castle, Solomon Kane, things like that. Oh yeah, that's right. Modifius actually came out with Kung Fu Panda. I think that was even in the list when I went through it, but this is cooperative. Don't know. You can't play this one solo. I don't know. Maybe you could play this one solo if you're controlling both characters, but I guess if you're looking for a kids game, that's worth checking out. And Modifius is actually a really good company, so I'd highly recommend this one in terms of if you're looking for like a family game. So that's something to look at, because those don't always come along, at least with a decent theme, that often. Usually the kids' games sometimes are a little sad. So I think that's pretty much it. I think that's gonna sum it up. And again, guys, I do apologize because this month there was not as much, but I really think Trickerion and Solomon Kane are, to be honest, the ones that are the heavy hitters this month for sure. And of course, Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea, that one was a massive heavy hitter, but had just closed yesterday. So, or today, I should say, because I'm filming. Yeah. So anyway, that's going to cover it. I think that's everything. So what we're going to do is I'm going to try my best to do a, because of all the crazy major projects that are really good coming out that I have my eye on and I've been researching into them, I am going to definitely do a rolling on Kickstarter for July, in mid-July. Now, I don't know whether it'll be between the 10th or the 20th, but somewhere in that window, I'm going to try to release one so you guys can get some informed feedback on which ones I think are the cream of the crop out of, I can tell you there'll be a decent amount to choose from at that point in time. I think that video will be even better because there's a lot of those ones that I've been following for waiting for their releases to come. So I'll be even more informative with the information. With this particular one, a little less informative because a lot of these ones I haven't played. They're brand new. Trickerion, I never got a chance to actually play the original Kickstarter. This is brand new. Solomon Kane's brand new. This is brand new. Like, all these are brand new. There's not a single major reprint anywhere. So this one was a tough one to recommend things. But hopefully this was useful for you to kind of at least pinpoint some projects and maybe some that you weren't thinking of. Let me know in the comments below. Again, if I missed anything, if there's a great solo project out there that I totally skipped over, let me know in the comments below because I'd love to hear it. I'd like to be informed. I'm sure the people on the channel would also like to hear about it. And if you have any other thoughts, suggestions, comments in terms of what I could do to enhance this particular segment of the or this series of rolling on Kickstarter, feel free to fire that in the comments as well. Hopefully this is a nice casual rip through of Kickstarter, which is what I want it to be. I don't want it to be official. I don't want it to be sponsored. I don't want it to be a push of product that I think is, you know, basically what I'm trying to do is just me and you sitting in front of the Kickstarter webpage, ripping through some games and seeing and pointing out a couple that I think are pretty cool, as if I was literally sitting right beside you. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.